You're going to have to adjust to life in a wheelchair, the doctor said, voice measured but firm. My entire body went cold. I stared at the stark white hospital sheets on my lap, legs that refused to move, no matter how hard I willed them to. The reality of it all pressed down on me like a suffocating weight. I might never walk again. I was only 17, halfway through junior year, when the car accident changed everything. One moment I was in the passenger seat with my cousin, blasting music and joking about summer plans. The next, headlights flooded my vision, metal screamed against metal, and the world spun in a violent cacophony. When I came to in the hospital, half my body was numb. A nurse hovered over me, asking me questions I couldn't process. They told me I had suffered spinal damage that would make it impossible to walk again, an incomplete paraplegia that would almost certainly confine me to a wheelchair for life. I remember how my parents tried to put on a brave face. My mom held my hand and said, "We love you no matter what. You'll still live a full life." But behind her eyes, I saw heartbreak. My dad insisted on second opinions, specialized rehab programs, anything to cling to hope, but the doctors were consistent in their message. The likelihood of me walking again, let alone leading an active life, was slim to none. If I'm being honest, there were days in the hospital when I gave in to despair. I'd stare at my motionless legs and feel an ache so deep it was like a physical punch to my chest. All the simple things I'd taken for granted, running up the stairs, climbing into a car, dancing at prom, suddenly felt like unattainable fantasies. Well-meaning friends would visit, their eyes full of pity. Teachers sent me encouraging emails, "We're rooting for you. Hang in there." But with every polite nod and forced smile, my confidence waned. At night, I'd pretend to sleep just so the nurses wouldn't see me sobbing into my pillow. After a month, I was transferred to a rehabilitation center. The first time I met my physical therapist, Rosa, she greeted me with a soft but unwavering determination. "We'll do our best," she said. I looked at her skeptically. She just smiled, as if she knew I was daring her to give me empty promises. She didn't. Instead, she said, "You've got some nerve signal left in those legs. It's faint, but it's there. We'll see what we can do with it." Weeks of grueling therapy followed. Although the medical consensus was bleak, Rosa didn't let me brood in self-pity. She had me lifting small weights with my legs, doing repetitive exercises with cables and pullers, trying anything to spark a connection between my brain and those uncooperative muscles. It felt pointless at first, like pushing a boulder that refused to budge. Every session left me exhausted, sweat-soaked, on the verge of tears. There were no miraculous breakthroughs, no sudden day where I just stood up and walked. Instead, it was a slow, laborious process, measured in the slightest flicker of movement or a barely detectable twitch in a muscle. One evening, about 2 months into my rehab, I managed to press my left foot half an inch off the ground. It was tiny, ridiculous, even, but it was everything to me. That half-inch might as well have been a mile. I called Rosa in, heart hammering, and showed her. My foot twitched again, a trembling motion that nearly made me cry with relief. She nodded, proud but cautious. "That's progress," she said, "but be prepared. Progress can stall, or even reverse. Keep working. Keep believing." I remember that day as the first time a spark of real hope flared in me. If I could move my foot, even slightly, maybe the doctors were wrong. Maybe I didn't have to accept a lifetime of immobility. Still, I'd learned not to declare it to the world. Too many times, medical professionals insisted the outcome was practically set in stone. Too many times, I dared to hope, only to feel crushed again. So I decided to keep my growing ambition, a stubborn determination to prove them wrong, mostly to myself. Once I was discharged home, I faced the daily challenges of returning to my normal life in a wheelchair. My high school was mostly accessible, but the hallways felt narrower, my peers stared awkwardly, and sports or dance events stung with painful reminders of what I'd lost. People tried to be kind, but their pity grated on me. Worse, I overheard whispers, "She'll never dance at prom. I can't imagine how she'll get across the graduation stage next year." Those comments sparked a fierce resolve. If I was going to stand or walk, I wanted to do it somewhere that would prove them all wrong. Graduation day. The vision took root in my mind, my name announced, me rising from my wheelchair, and taking my steps, no matter how wobbly, across the stage. I clung to that image like a lifeline, but the progress was painfully slow. For every inch of muscle control gained, I encountered days of spasms or relapses. Doctors repeated their refrain, "Don't overexert yourself. The spinal injury is severe. You might cause more harm. But in my secret heart, I refused to stop. I told almost no one about my dream of walking on graduation day. Not my closest friends, not even my parents. They saw me improving enough to sometimes stand with braces for a few seconds, but my publicly acknowledged goal was just stronger mobility. In private, I'd wake up at dawn, do specialized exercises in my room, watch physical therapy videos, and push myself beyond the schedules set by my official rehab sessions. Each night, I'd flop into bed exhausted, sometimes crying in pain, but determined to press on. My parents assumed I was simply following doctor's orders, not realizing I was doubling or tripling the recommended intensity. Did I push too hard sometimes? Absolutely. But I was on a mission, and I wasn't going to let fear or caution stand in my way. Over time, I ditched the walker for short practice sessions in my bedroom, bracing myself against the wall or a piece of furniture. My legs would tremble violently, but each step felt like a victory. I kept it hidden, though, worried that if people saw me fail or stumble, they'd clip my budding confidence before it had a chance to bloom. Senior year flew by in a blur. I juggled the emotional toll of my physical struggles with the typical stress of college applications, final exams, and teenage drama. The wheelchair was still my main mode of transportation at school. In between classes, I'd noticed the flash of sympathy in my classmates' eyes. A few older kids would hold open doors with awkward politeness. Teachers would offer me extended deadlines, even when I didn't need them. Their kindness sometimes felt suffocating. I wanted to scream, "Stop treating me like I'm helpless. You have no idea what I'm planning." Finally, June arrived. Graduation day. My heart thudded the entire morning. I woke up extra early, warming up my muscles, slipping on the leg braces I'd acquired to help stabilize my knees, and practicing a few secret steps in my bedroom. I'd never tested a distance longer than the length of my hallway, but I told myself it would be enough to cross the stage. My mother knocked on my door as I was finishing. "We need to leave soon, honey." "I'm almost ready." I called back, voice shaky with excitement and nerves. Did she notice how breathless I sounded? Probably chalked it up to nerves about the ceremony. We drove to the school in relative silence. My dad murmured how proud he was, how far I'd come academically despite the accident. My mom dabbed her eyes, recalling how uncertain everything had been just 1 year ago. In the backseat, I clenched and unclenched my fists, praying my body wouldn't fail me at the crucial moment. In the auditorium, I lined up with the other graduates, my wheelchair positioned among the row of chairs reserved for students with mobility considerations. My principal gave a speech about resilience, how our class had faced challenges. I half listened, adrenaline pounding. Then names started echoing over the speakers. One by one, students walked or rolled across the stage to accept their diplomas. My name was called. Applause erupted, though in the background, I was aware of a hush. People always quieted when they saw me maneuvering my wheelchair forward. My father held up his phone to record, my mom already in tears. I moved the wheelchair near the ramp leading onto the stage. But instead of following the designated wheelchair route, I paused, gripping the armrests. I felt my chest tighten. This was it. No time for fear. In a single, determined motion, I rose. I heard gasps ripple through the crowd. My classmates, who knew me only as the girl in the wheelchair, stared open-mouthed. My leg braces locked into place, shaky but supportive. Step by step, I inched forward. My knees wobbled, but I didn't topple. The hush deepened, thick with disbelief and awe. After 3 or 4 steps, the entire auditorium erupted in cheers. I forced myself to keep my eyes on the stage, my breath ragged. My legs screamed in protest. But with each step, I felt a surge of triumph. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to stop. The principal, Ms. Alvarez, came rushing forward to help, but I waved her off gently. "I got this," I whispered. By the time I reached her, I was trembling from head to toe. She handed me my diploma with tears in her eyes, and we shared a brief embrace. Then, with applause still thunderous, I turned and took a few more steps to exit the stage, carefully lowering myself back into my wheelchair. Relief and exhilaration flooded me in equal measure. The rest of the ceremony was a blur of people rushing to congratulate me. My parents dashed over, practically sobbing with joy. Classmates patted my back, calling me incredible and so inspiring. I caught Rosa, my physical therapist, in the crowd, smiling with pride. Even though she hadn't known my precise plan for the big day, she must have sensed I was heading toward some milestone. "You did it," she mouthed, giving me a thumbs up. I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. In the days that followed, the story circulated around school and social media. People called it a miracle, but it wasn't. It was countless hours of sweat, tears, and unwavering determination. I still needed the wheelchair for everyday life, and I knew I had a long way to go if I wanted to gain more sustained walking ability. But that moment on stage symbolized everything I'd fought for. The idea that even a grim prognosis wasn't the end of hope. Years later, I continued my physical therapy. I can now walk short distances with the help of leg braces, though I keep the wheelchair handy for longer outings. My days of feeling trapped by a medical verdict are long behind me. Sometimes, I visit rehab centers to speak with patients who've been told they'll never walk again. I share my story, not promising that everyone can replicate it, but reminding them that doctors aren't infallible. There's always room for hope, for perseverance, for that 1% chance that can blossom if you tend it with everything you've got. Looking back, I don't blame the medical team for their dire warnings. They were doing their best with the data they had. But I also realize that, sometimes, the most crucial data point is the one no chart can measure: the human spirit's capacity to defy limits. On that graduation day, with 1,000 eyes watching and tears streaming down my face, I proved, to them, to my family, but mostly to myself, that impossible is just a word. And sometimes, all it takes to conquer the impossible is a few determined steps forward, no matter how shaky they might be.